Well,
Okay.
hello everyone. I can see that there are about 20 of you apparently in this session. So it's nice that you're all listening. I can't see you, but obviously if you want to write anything in the comments, we can certainly see what you're saying in the chat. So my name's Ben Murta and I mainly work on Indonesia, but I'm also convener of the BA Languages and Cultures, together with my colleague Narges Farzad, who you can see on the screen. And my other colleague, Kea Anjaria, has also dropped in very nicely. So you'll be able to ask us about anything as you want to go along or write in the chat. So we've got this new degree of the BA Languages and Cultures, which we've started this year after thinking about it for quite a while, how to bring together the languages that we teach in the department so that students can not only study the languages, combine the different languages, but also study them together with film cultures, with literatures, with other cultural texts, thinking about how language works in different parts of Africa, Asia, and the near Middle East too. So that's what the degree does. So it will allow you to specialize in a language. You can specialize in it all the way through your degree if you wish, or you can dabble a little bit if that's what you prefer to do. And alongside that, you'll be able to take courses on film, on literature, on cultural studies, and so on. But while you're doing those courses, and they'll cover the range of geographical areas, you'll obviously be able to specialize in countries or in cultures that you're specifically interested in through the project work that you do, through the essays that you write, and so on. Narges, is there anything, or Kea, is there anything that you want to add?
No, I think you did. Did you flag up that it's available as a joint degree as well? That with a discipline,
Yeah.
that's a
So
crucial thing. That it can be 50% with us and 50% from the whole range of law and social sciences and other arts and humanities degrees at SOAS.
that's right. And Narges, just let everyone know what you specialize in, and Kea too, in case people have
Of
questions.
course, yes. Salam, durud bar shoma. Hello, everyone. Happy Chinese New Year if you're celebrating that. My name is Narges Farzad, as Ben kindly said, and I work on Persian. So I teach Persian language. I work on Persian poetry, and I'm also the chair of the Center for Iranian Studies in Kea.
Hi, yes, I'm Kea Anjaria. I work on contemporary literature and Turkish. I run the second year module, Understanding Texts, and a couple of Middle Eastern fiction modules as well. So I'm here if you have any questions as well, but I have nothing to add to the introduction.
Thanks, Kea. Thanks, Narges. So I think the idea is that, first of all, I'm going to be teaching a course which is called Film from Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, sort of level 2, which is a second year course. And the way I'm going to be teaching that course is I'm going to be thinking about the city in film cultures from different parts of the areas that we cover, and thinking about the different types of genre that we might get, whether it be science fiction film or romance or horror film or whatever it might be, sort of set in the city. And so I thought I'd just give a very brief overview and also ask you a few questions for a bit of input to just sort of show you the sorts of things that you might be studying if you're on a course that's looking at film on our degree. So I'm going to have a go, I hope, at sharing this. And hopefully you can see this now. Narges, can someone tell me if they can
say
see?
yes, I can certainly see it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so we've started off here with so the city in film, or the city in cinema. And when we think about cinema, we can obviously think about the films that we watch, but we can also think about where we go and watch them. Yeah, because cinema is an industry and there's money involved. People put money into making films, people pay money to go and watch films. Traditionally, or at least before COVID, people went to the cinema to watch films, but probably your experience is similar to mine over the last year, where we've probably spent more time watching stuff on screen. Might be a computer screen, it might be a phone screen. Sometimes we might be sharing screens with other people and so on. But so I've just got pictures of a few different cinemas here from around the world. There's I've got an Indonesian one, which is sort of in the middle, in the bottom there. That's sort of like a nice old cinema from Indonesia. We've got the Regal, which is from New Delhi. We've got up there in the top, we've got the Rialto, which is apparently in Morocco. We've got some people queuing for the cinema in a shopping mall cinema in Singapore. And then we've also got a cinema audience in Lagos. So that's just sort of a way of giving you a sense of the coverage of film cultures and film audiences and so on that we might have when we're in the course. Hopefully we're going to see my next slide now. Okay. And I wonder if anyone, so why think about the city in cinema? So what's the point in studying this in university? Because for a lot of us, we might just think, oh, cinema is entertainment. It's something we do on a Friday or Saturday night when we've got nothing else to do, or when we want to meet up with our friends, when we want to go on a date. So there's lots of reasons why we might just go to the cinema without really thinking about it. It's a social activity. But what is a bit of a long quote here, but I guess what I'm saying is that the cinema and the city are interrelated. So basically with the formation of the big cities sort of from the 19th and 20th century, and you know, lots of new cities are still forming today, especially if we think about the changes in China and so on, and some of these big new cities in the global south. We can think of the cinema as being a culture which is also very new. So the cinema sort of began in the very late 1890s and then took off in the 20th century, in the 1900s, with silent movies. And obviously now we live in a world where we have films being made, whether in Hong Kong or in Los Angeles, or whether they're made in Bollywood and so on. These films then circulate globally, and we have images of cities in our mind. We have lots of ideas being explored about cities. And it's a key aspect of our modern culture. And what a lot of filmmakers do, cultural art activists and so on, they explore a lot of questions around what is it to live in a city? What do cities mean? And so sort of when cities were first being thought about in cinema, and when cinema was first coming on stream, maybe we might have thought about these sort of, just these glimpses of urban life. People recorded people leaving a factory, and we also have this image here of a train. And I wonder if anyone in the chat knows what this image is from. Maybe who made this image, who made this film, and why we might think it's important. Anyone want to have a go? I'm avidly waiting here for you to tap away. Is anyone raising a hand or anything like that to signify that they might have a go? If not, I might put Kaya or Nargiz on the spot.
Oh no. Well,
Kaya, do you know?
Yeah, she probably knows.
I don't. I mean, my first thought was Kurosawa, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So basically, it's the Lumiere brothers, and this was a 50-second film of a train arriving in a station, which was made in 1895, and it was first screened in 1896 to audiences first in France and then beyond. And the big story around this, which is actually not true, is that when people saw this image of the train pulling into the station and passengers waiting for the train to arrive and waiting for their loved ones to get off the train, so audiences were apparently so shocked that they ran out of the viewing room because they thought that this train was literally gonna, I don't know, run them over or something like that. Now, obviously this is an exaggeration, and even our film viewers from 1896 in France were not quite as gullible as that, but it was a big sensation. And it's interesting to think that the first ever film that was being made was about a train pulling into a train station, because when we think about cinema and the city, one of the things about cities is that people are constantly arriving in cities, people are constantly leaving cities. In the old days, it would have been by train and so on. These days, it might be by plane. And so when we think about films, we'll often have people arriving in airports or people arriving in train stations. For my sins, I watched Love Actually last night for educational reasons. But obviously that film, which is about all sorts of random encounters in the city, mainly of London, it starts in the airport and it ends in the airport with people arriving and people leaving and so on. So anyway, so these are some of the reasons why I think it's interesting to think about film. And I'm just going to go on to a few questions which I think are useful to think about and which are being thought about by filmmakers when they make their films. So in the pictures here, we've got an image from Tokyo Story, which is a 1950s film from Japan, which is basically about some aged parents who are from outside of Tokyo who decide to go and visit their children, their son and wife, who live in Tokyo, and they're very traditional. This is in the 1950s, and so they're born in the 19th century or something. And they arrive in the city, and their son has no time for them because basically he's too busy living a city life. And it's this clash of these people who arrive from the countryside to see their family, the family as they imagine it. They arrive in the city and the son has no time, but the daughter-in-law is terribly keen to try and make this new imagining of the family work in this new city situation of Tokyo. And so it's a lovely film if you have time to watch it or have a look at it. And then the other three films that I've got here, the top corner, we've got 12 Stories, which is a Singaporean film, which is set in a building which is 12 stories high, but we also follow 12 stories about different inhabitants of that city block and about how their lives interact with each other and so on. And it's about marginalization, it's about poverty, it's about opportunity, it's about thwarted desire, and all of these things which come together in this one little building in Singapore. Rather similar to that, just underneath, we've got an Egyptian movie, which is called the Yacubian Building, which is from the early 20th century, so about 20 years ago. But it's a film which, again, set in one building, a prominent building in Cairo, and it's about the different people who live in that building, how their lives interact, and in a way, it's a capsule of what life in Egypt, life in Cairo is through the various people who live in that one building. And then the top left, we've got a lovely Bengali film, 1971, which is called The Interview. And this is a great film about a guy who's basically trying to get to the cleaners, get to the laundry to pick up his suit because he's going for an interview, for a job, his up and coming, his aspiration and so on. And his journey is basically thwarted by labor demonstrations and strikes and so on. And it's about him trying to get through the city so that he can get on with his aspiration. And I think all of these types of films are great they're entertaining to watch, they're really beautiful and so on, but they're also interesting to think about how a filmmaker is imagining what their particular societies are, what their particular cultures are, as societies modernize and as the city develops and so on. The next one that I think is interesting, I've got here dystopias and other futures. So I've in the bottom right-hand corner there, we've got a German, Metropolis, Fritz Lang, which is this classic 1930s sort of almost scientific imagination of what future cities could be. But then I think in more recent times, when people think about cities, quite often they're thinking about cities when they go wrong. Maybe they're cities that are hit by disease or cities that are invaded by sort of aliens from another planet and so on. And so on the top right corner, we've got a Korean film from 2013, which is called Flu. It's probably a bit too much to watch it these days, in days of COVID, to see how this sort of thing can be imagined. But it's a fascinating film about how a terrible illness strikes this one particular city in Korea, and there's discussions about the mayor and what the president is doing, and then basically we have a scene where finally, because the inhabitants don't want to be held into their city, and the president sends the troops onto their own inhabitants to say, no, you've got to stay there. And I guess it's about civil liberties, it's about imagining what's the extent of power what are we as Korean citizens from one city and then another city? What's our allegiance to each other? And then the other two movies, there's District 9, which is a South African British collaboration, a sort of very exciting science fiction movie from the beginning of the 20th century. Whether we can call it a South African movie or not, given the British input, and some people have had some queries about it, but I think it's very exciting, a really well-received movie generally. And it's about thinking about the future, but it's also thinking about the past, because it's thinking about apartheid in the way that the aliens were treated when they arrived. They're referred to as prawns in this movie, and they all end up getting sort of corralled into one specific part of the city, and they're not allowed to leave, and so on and so forth. And then the bottom corner, sort of thinking about other futures and other possibilities. Some of you might recognize this as Wakanda from Black Panther. So this great imagining of what a city could be if the world worked in another way. And this is where I think it's also, film is interesting to think about what other possibilities might be. And, you know, we've got the idea of Afrofuturism there. You know, how could African cities be if they were freed from the oppression of colonialism and so on? And how can African filmmakers and African cultural workers imagine other possibilities for Africa and for African cities? But also another one is, I guess, thinking about different sexual possibilities, different gender possibilities, different ways that people can love each other. And this is why I bring in my final slide here, this idea of encounters in the city. And I think the film is really exciting. The city is exciting because in a way we're sort of meant to follow the paths, we're meant to obey the traffic lights, we're meant to sort of cross the road on the pedestrian crossings and so on. Yet what we all know is that we as humans rarely follow those rules, and we always try to break them a little bit. And this is where the city is exciting for imagining random encounters that can happen in the city. And so so the bottom corner there, we have The White Balloon, which is a film from Iran, which is a lovely film about how, sort of seen through the eyes of a young child, as she sort of wanders through the city, gets a bit lost in the city, looking for a balloon, and then all sorts of different people that she meets in the city as she tries to sort of get back home, she's lost, and so on and so forth. And it's a great way that the filmmaker there has thought about sort of showing what the city of Tehran is and what the city of Tehran can be, and the different people who live in there, without engaging in a overtly political way about what's going on in Tehran. The image on the bottom right, that's from an Indonesian film called Selamat Pagi Malam. And it's basically a film which follows different people in the city. They have random encounters, and the man and woman here find love in the city. And it's a love that they weren't expecting, but it's a love that works well for them. And then the top two pictures, I've got one which is Hammam and one which is Rafiki, Rafiki is a Kenyan film, Hammam set in Istanbul. And there it's about possibilities of sort of imagining possibilities for same-sex love with the film Rafiki from Kenya and Hammam in Istanbul. So these are the ideas that I'm interested in thinking about film. I'm sure I've probably gone over my time limit. And if there are any questions, any comments, I don't know if Kaya and Nagas want to say anything, or Jenny. If anyone wants to chip in or give any comments, maybe write in the chat box about films that you might have seen, or if you've got questions now, then let me know. I'm going to try and end the slideshow. Any questions, just write them down.
Fantastic. And I think we'll definitely have a proper good 10 minutes or so of questions, which I hope they're probably mulling over the sense. So I'll share my screen now for my PowerPoint. And I have a confession to make that recently I chaired a talk, eminent professor from Columbia University in New York. And when I asked him, would you like to share your screen for PowerPoint? And he very sternly said that in Columbia, we disapprove of PowerPoints when we give lectures. So, and I noticed that Ben was extremely restrained. I've probably gone overboard with these images, but I wanted to give you as much of a picture of the vast range of topics that we cover at SOAS. And also we had hoped that another colleague who looks at the cultures of Asia, Africa, South Asia and Southeast Asia to come and contribute to this, but unfortunately, due to illness, is not available to come. So I have squeezed in even more PowerPoints in there. So as Ben introduced degree to you, that we have a focus on cultures, on screen, on films, on languages, absolutely the backbone of what we do at the School of Languages, Cultures and Linguistics. And we look at the literature as well. So in the first year, we introduce our students to literatures of Africa, Middle East, South and Southeast Asia through the art of storytelling. And you can follow that on with slightly more reflective view on poetic cultures as well. And of course, the marriage of all this literature with this, with the screen, as Ben said, stage, with music, with artworks, with objects that are produced, and of course, the written text. So I also wanted to tell you, I'm sure you know about SOAS, but look, it at SLCL, short for School of Languages, Cultures and Linguistics, we really do look at a vast area. And of course, at SOAS, it's even bigger because East Asia, China, Japan, Korea are in there as well. But ours is, as you will see, I don't know whether my instructions on screen, you can see them or not, but it blocks my view. So we really go from the east, from Indonesia, where it's Ben's specific expertise, all the way to West Africa. We can't offer you everything about every single part of these vast regions every year, but we try to pick and choose for you to at least have a good informative sample of them. And of course, this is a region which is really has dominated the world culture, the world spiritual quests. This is the land of the oldest religions. These are the lands of Hinduism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, coming through, going west to the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and so many other significant manners of worship in all these societies that have an oral tradition. So I am trying to, okay, that's better. And when we look at the literatures, we begin with at least introducing you to the oldest works of literature that we know about. I don't know whether you recognize any of these images, but these are from the Epic of Gilgamesh, an Assyrian, the oldest known epic to man. It's about 2000 BC, and there are many tablets, clay tablets with all these extraordinary images. When we all get together again and we can be face to face, I hope you will go next door to British Museum and just feast on the amazing range of stuff available for you. And of course, there's Petra, Jordan. So I'm moving then to the Iranian world, the Achaemenid world of 550 BC. But all of these tell us stories. There are stories of conquest. There are stories of finding the secret to immortality. There are battles to defend honor, to address betrayal, to show your loyalty. Jumping ahead, going much further east, I don't know whether you recognize this, but this is, I think, a late 12th century. This is in Cambodia, an epic scene. I mean, this is just a tiny little snapshot of a vast bit. I've never had the privilege to visit, but I don't know whether Ben has been there. So this is the battle scenes of the war between the Khmer and Chams, and this is at Angkor Thom in modern day Cambodia. Then we have the Persian epics, all sorts of romantic epics, heroic epics. The Shahnameh, this is a folio of a manuscript. The manuscript is about 16th century, but the epic was completed in 1010, so over 1,000 years ago. And on the left, we have a scene of warriors. These are about, I think, 18th century, and it's Mali, but it's in a museum in Nigeria. And of course, the maps, and they tell us the stories. Again, Mali, we forget about this extraordinary kingdoms in West Africa, in Central Africa, of course, North Africa and the East. And then I'm leaping across. The beauty of digital world is I can go east, west. And of course, the stories that we have, this, where have the original stories come from? Perhaps in Pali, certainly from East. And these are the stories that are native to India. And if I remember the name, my mind is gone. The Jaka, anyway, it will come back to me. The Jataka stories, that is about the birth of Buddha, but it is found in India. And all the gods and goddesses that dominate our lives, Vishnu, the god of love on the left, and certain categories of stories are very basic. It is, man met woman, man met man, woman met woman, whoever is in search of love, and they somehow find it in the most extraordinary circumstances. And yet another quest begins to win the beloved over. And one of the very famous scenes that dominates the whole region, whether you see it in Arabic depiction, whether it's in Persian, or going further east in Indian manuscripts, is the story of Khosrow and Shir Khosrow, the king, this mighty king, sitting on his white horse and coming across Shirin, the Armenian princess, bathing, totally unaware that he is there. And you have again a 15th century Persian manuscript and a later one from the court of Mughals. And these stories of love and separation dominate all cultures. So perhaps there is a quest, there is now perhaps a bit of longing and other images from 16th century manuscripts. And you might think, why did I call my talk the Song of the Reed that tells of love and separation? And stay with me, and I'll show you towards the end. And here, more manuscripts, and here is two. I love these exquisite 18th century Mali figurines, the most basic, the most touching demonstration of partnership and love. And these are known as the Dogus figurines, and often they were buried with, if a tribal leader, a monarch passed away, so he would not be, or she would not be, alone. And I've brought you to the title of my work, which I called it the Reed. Why reed? Because this is the oldest instrument known to man, and it's the most basic of instruments. And when you play it, it does sound like a cry of desperation, a cry of longing. And it's an instrument that all shepherds have, and all of our known prophets have been a shepherd at some point in their lives. So it is an instrument that voices our longing for union with this beloved, whatever whoever this beloved is, a, a love for a sibling, a chaste longing, a passionate, profane, earthly love, a request for reunion with the divine beloved. And of course, the man who's put this on the literary scene is Rumi. And I perhaps I'll go to one image and then I'll come back to this. I am sure he's known to you. And in the courses that we teach, we would like to look at our unity in diversity, or the certain figures who have come through, and who the influence of their works, of their art, their music, or whatever that they have composed has gone well beyond the national borders. Of course, in 13th century, national borders really were quite meaningless. So here is our man Maulana Jalaluddin Balkhi from Central Asia, born in Bakhsh, just near the, at the moment, just inside Tajikistan, very close to Balkh. And this is at a time when the Mongols, I don't know if you've heard of them, Genghis Khan, the mighty, fearsome Genghis Khan, they are coming closer and closer to Central Asia, to where it's Uzbekistan now, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan. And his father is a cleric, and he realizes that he's not going to thrive under the leadership should the Mongols ever get to Iran. So they set off, and it takes them a long journey to go through modern day Iran, through modern day Iraq, go and do their pilgrimage in Mecca, through modern day Syria. And he was offered a job as a headmaster of a school in what was Iconium, the eastern parts of the Roman Empire, you know, the Byzantine then, Konya. And the father settled there. And of course, as you see, I'm not going to go through all the lists of the dates, that as he grew, you know, he has got married during this journey. He is now the father of two sons, and he meets this extraordinary man, Shams of Tabriz. Shams is an Arabic word for the sun, who turns Rumi's life completely upside down. And why is he called Rumi? Because those who possess the mausoleum, they can claim ownership, if you like, although Rumi only writes in Persian. He died and was buried in what they, at the time was called Rum in Konya, a huge place of pilgrimage now for lovers of Rumi. And as you see, Rumi's father was quite right. But very soon after they left, you know, Mongols destroyed the mighty mythical city of Samarkand, and they seized Balkh. And you will see in 1258, this incredibly significant date in the Islamic calendar, the sacking of Baghdad and the end of the caliphate. And if you'd like to just see where, if you have studied European philosophy literature, Rumi's life just about overlaps with Saint Francis of Assisi and Meister Eckhart. And I wanted to show you, go back to the this Song of the Reed. So Rumi's epic works, spiritual verses, starts by this word. It says, listen to this reed as it laments, as it tells the tale of separation. In Persian, he says, بشنو این نی چون شکایت می کند، از جدایی ها حکایت می کند، که از نیستان تا مرا ببریده اند، در نفیرم مرد و زن نالیده اند. And this is the tale of separation from one's homeland. It really speaks to our modern world of refugees, of migrations, whether it's in search for a better standard of life, whether it's because you're fleeing some natural disasters, some political situations. So, and it says it is like a reed instrument severed, but when you play it, the haunting music continues. I don't need to read all of this for you. The presentation is recorded, so come back and visit it. And you see the reed flute, there it is. And of course, we need the frame drum as well. We need we need percussion. We need the heartbeat of our, you know, loving heart to accompany these poems, which are often sung. And I want to, and of course, these images you recognize. This is the mausoleum of Maulana in Konya, and the whirling dervishes. And the man in the black cloak, that's a representation of Shams. And Shams introduced Rumi to Sama, these ecstatic way of worship when you repeat the name of God. And I'm going to leave you. I'm just going to play a little song for you. How am I doing? Am I running out of? Oops.
زین سرام گرزان سر است عاقبت ما را بدان شه رهبر است هرچه گویم عشق را شرها بیان هرچه گویم عشق را شرها بیان چون به عشق آیم خجل باشم از آن چون به عشق آیم خجل باشم از آن چون قلم من در نوشتن چون قلم من در نوشتن شتافت چون به عشق آمد قلم بر خود شکافت چون سخن در وصف این حالت رسید هم قلم بشکست و هم کاغذ درید هم قلم بشکست و هم کاغذ درید
And you might wonder why I chose that. Well, tomorrow is going to be a busy day for the florists, aren't they? I hope you're all getting ready to send me lots of red roses. Digital ones will do. And so I thought for Valentine's Day, it's all about love. And hopefully when you join us and we look at all our literature, all our films and so on, you realize mankind's biggest quest is for ishq, for love. And I thought I'll leave you at the end of this presentation with another quatrain from Rumi, where he says, از شبنم عشق خاک آدم گل شد صد فتنه و شور در جهان حاصل شد سرنشتر عشق بر رگ روح زدن یک قطره از آن چکید و نامش دل شد. The dewdrop of love turned a lump of clay into Adam, and the whole world was stirred with complicities and fervor. The tip of the lance of love pierced the vein of spirit. One drop fell to earth, and they called it heart. And if you want more information about our programs at the School of Languages, Cultures and Linguistics, please visit that. We also have a whole series of lectures on, language presentations on SOAS YouTube channel. And now I think if I come out of this, and please, any questions that you have for myself or Ben, you'll find us on the website as well, and come to SOAS. I just love all these colors. I can't resist using them. And thank you very much.
Nargis, we've got a couple of questions that have come in. So there's one from Sydney. What's the process for choosing a language to specialize in and for studying abroad? So basically, many students will already know which language they want to specialize in. So some people might come in saying, I'm quite clear that I want to come and study Swahili. And others will be saying, well, I'm quite clear that I want to come in and study Turkish or Vietnamese. other people might not quite know. So the key is that sort of between being sort of the A-level results being sorted out and so on, you can get in contact with us at SOAS, Narges and me, and you can chat through your language option. And certainly in that first week, when you come for what's called Freshers Week, you'll be able to discuss with us then which language it is that you want to do if you're not quite sure. You know, if you're thinking, do I do Arabic or do I do Persian? I don't quite know. Or do I do Indonesian? Do I do Vietnamese? You can chat with us. And then once you've chosen that language, those languages you'll study in the first year, if you wish to continue into the second year, and then you'll be able to do your year abroad. And so once it gets to the beginning of your second year of language study, you'll know your language teacher well by that point, and you'll be able to discuss with them about whether you want to do the language year abroad or not, and you'll get more details about it, and there'll be briefings and so on. Yeah. And then the other question is, what courses are usually paired with international relations? So that's where, if you're doing a joint degree, so you're doing language and cultures with international relations, the structure is there on the website. But it basically means you'll be doing half of your degree with us. So in the first year, you'd be doing a language. And then alongside that, there are a couple of courses that you'll be doing. There'll be something which is called Languages in the World, which is thinking about the place of language in the different parts of the country that we study. And then there'll be another module that you'll do, which is called it's basically Introduction to the Cultures of Asia, Africa, and the Near Middle East. In the second year, if you want to carry on with the language, you can do, but you don't have to. Maybe you've decided that language isn't quite for you. And then you'll do a range of courses which will focus on introducing you to the study of research and to doing projects. You'll do a course on literature, a course on film, and a course on regional studies and this idea of how do you study the region. But there's a bit of flexibility, and then once you get to your final year, there are some courses that you'll be expected to take, a research project, for example, and then you can also choose a couple of modules which will sort of relate to the specific ideas and interests that you've developed over the first and second year. And maybe you'll find something that intersects with the international relations aspect, and that would be the ideal for the dissertation, for example.
Very good. Yes, I'm just looking at some question. I think there was a question about some European languages. No, although there is an endangered languages project at SOAS, but that's very much postgraduate, not at the undergraduate level. And I think someone had asked about Creole. No, so you have the list of languages will be available on our website. Of course, when you see the vast range, and several colleagues teach several languages. So if that colleague, for example, is on academic leave, on sabbatical research leave, then you might find that the languages that they teach will not be available for 1 year. But do check, we always have several languages from Asia, Africa, Middle East. But we can't possibly offer all of them. We would love to, but there are already about 42 languages that our colleagues have expertise in.
We've got a question here. What's the dissertation like? And I remember when I first went to university, you know, there was me sort of in my first few weeks at university, and I was worrying about the dissertation that I'd have to do 3 years later. And because the dissertation sounds like quite a big project. And I think the first thing to say is don't worry about the dissertation, because you'll basically have your first year of study, then your second year of study. And all of this is sort of preparing you and giving you the tools that you need so that by the time you get to your third year, you have the skills that you need to write the dissertation. It won't be such a scary prospect at all, and it will actually be quite an exciting one. And you'll be able to pick on anything that you've sort of covered in the previous years. You know, so if you're particularly interested in, I don't know, Nigerian sort of Nollywood film, by that point, you can write your topic on Nollywood film. If you're particularly interested in Vietnamese literature, you'll be able to write on Vietnamese literature and pick the topic. So it's very open to what you want to do. And basically, we're providing the first and second year of study so that you can have the tools so you can explore and really follow your intended specialisms.
Absolutely. And I wanted to just flag up that I hope I'm not repeating what you might have said, Ben, when I was paying proper attention. If you do have a background in the language for whatever reason, heritage affiliation, having visited, lived in a country, you can start at a higher level. And not for every language, I do emphasize that, but do get in touch with us. So if you've done a bit of Hindi, say, or you've done a bit of Swahili before, and you're not an absolute beginner, so you can start your degree as a first-year student, but have entry into a slightly, say, lower intermediate language, for example. So do get in touch with conveners and ask questions.
Yeah, so always just email me or Nagas, and at any time, and we'll be able to sort of direct you to someone else who can answer the question, or we can have a Zoom chat or whatever it is to try and sort those doubts that you might have.
There was another question that's part of the dissertation one. Someone was asking what the name of the song was that you played, Nagas.
Oh, yes. Well, I should put that. Shall I put that? This is an extraordinary man, Hussein Umumi, who now teaches in University of Irvine in California and Paris. And it is just The Tale of Love. It's actually, several songs, but I just picked up the intro. So I have put that in there, and you'll be able to find them on YouTube. So it's quite it's like a dialogue, if you like. And you see, it's the spiritual, the Sufism is quite open to all genders. So, as you saw, female voice is not forbidden to hear in that tradition.
Brilliant.
I just wanted to add one thing. So I think it's Hanya who said, would one potentially be able to study that's only recently been recognised, such as Creole? But there is the potential, searching in the dissertation, to begin to explore something like that. Yeah, or you might want to think about the way that a particular dialect works in film or in literature and so on. So again, we might not be experts in the particular thing that you're wanting to explore, but we know enough about how to guide your study so that you can sort of explore these very specific interests that you might have. But that's more for the third year than the first year. And
did we mention a year abroad properly? And did we say that you can combine two languages as well as when you study? So if somebody already has on Arabic or Urdu, and they might think, well, I'll try Persian, they could do slightly more advanced Arabic and beginners Persian.
Yes,
and the year abroad as well can be split between two.
And because year abroad normally works on 2 semesters, and in the past I've had a student who did 1 semester. I mean, we have a degree that combines with French anyway, so we've had students do like 1 semester in Indonesia, 1 semester in France, but we've also had students do 1 semester in Indonesia, 1 semester in Burma, for example. They were much better at their Indonesian than at their Burmese, but it was very nice. They actually managed to do some volunteering work with Burmese refugees while in Indonesia. So they really managed to combine those things together very nicely. So again, these are things, things change over periods of time, and the possibilities in different countries also change. But the key thing is that, from the beginning, flag up to us what your interests are going to be, and we can make sure that we always have that in mind, so that once it comes to the second year and we're really planning that, we can do our best to make these combinations happen.
That's right. And we have relationships, formal agreements with host institutions, often universities or advanced language colleges all over the region. So when you arrive, there is a setup, there is a structure to welcome you. There are courses that you will sign up to. So again, you can ask about those as well. So wonderful places. Sometimes you have more than one destination open to you, say like for Arabic. Sometimes no, but hopefully we'll have all this material updated on our website before you arrive, so you can see, and hopefully testimonials from our students who have studied all over Asia, Africa, and Middle East in this lovely location.
If there is something that you can't find on the website and you really want to know it now, just email Nagas or myself and we will answer you directly.
Brilliant. Just before we wrap up, I know we've got a student ambassador, Jenny, on here. We haven't had any questions, but do you want to briefly just talk about what your experience at SOAS has been like, and sort of what like teaching and learning has been like due to COVID?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jenny. Hi everyone. I studied BA Japanese and Korean at SOAS from 2016 to 2020, and now I'm staying on for my MA Japanese studies. So I've kind of had the both pre and during COVID experience. And I'd say it's definitely different, and it takes some getting used to and finding a kind of study system that works, because obviously you can't go to a physical library. You don't get to kind of exist in that physical space at SOAS and sit in a classroom. But I think once you kind of figure out how things work for you, then there's a wealth of opportunities, and it's a real good chance to connect with people who are signing in from all over the globe, as there's definitely not just students from the UK signing in. And yeah, I think it's different, definitely, from like a standard, a normal year, but it is definitely still worth it and very enjoyable.
Amazing. And I think if there are no more, oh, there might be one more question.
Workload in a
Oh,
double degree.
so a double degree was hard work, but it's all about time management, definitely. But I think you need to make sure you schedule time for each half of the degree, and you don't kind of over focus on one half than the other, especially because I did 2 languages. That my second year was just language. I didn't do any culture. It was just language modules and classes. So that was definitely a lot more intense, because there was a lot of work and homework and coursework and stuff. But I think it really depends on the combination. I know people who did Japanese and linguistics, Japanese and history, and depending on how you work and if you get on better with, say, reading, then history is going to be a better combination. If you really love getting stuck into grammar and working hard on learning vocabulary, then maybe a double degree in languages will suit you better. And yeah, you can try and mix and match, and there's always open modules available to you if you decide you want to kind of try something a bit different as well.
Yeah, I was just going to dip in very quickly to say, check the structure of our degree, because what Jenny said is very true of a few languages, like, BA Japanese, Chinese, and BA Arabic, and another subject, where second year can be heavily just devoted to language. But BA languages and cultures, the plural in both half of that, offers more than just languages. So no year will be dominated purely by language studies. In fact, in the second year, language is an option. It's not compulsory. We very much would like our students to carry on with the language in order to then be able to take advantage of the year abroad as well. But you may not want to. SOAS is an absolute box of goodies. And you come here and there's so much you want to do, and you might think, well, I don't want to carry on with the language in year 2. That is fine. But even if you carry on with those languages, it won't dominate any year of your study. Possibly when you come back after your year abroad in the final year, you might want to do your dissertation or translation project in those, so you use your language more. But it's certainly true of a subject like BA Arabic and BA Japanese, and then there's more of that single language.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I should have clarified a bit more that with kind of the degrees that are a language name, like Japanese and BA Arabic, it's a lot more like intensive on the language side. That it's intended to get you from kind of nothing to as high level of fluency in that intensive way. Whereas I think the beauty of BA languages and cultures is that you can kind of dabble a bit, you can try different languages, you can make different combinations that nowhere else in the world is going to be able to offer you.
Jenny, I have something for you, because you've been here pre-COVID, students asked, "What's the social life at at SOAS?" I think I defer to your summary.
Well, I think it is unique to say the other universities in the UK, that a lot of my friends were at different universities in the UK where it's a lot more kind of everything's on campus. Whereas I think a lot of stuff is on campus, but then the student accommodation, lots of people live in the same student accommodation. So there's lots of kind of study groups and parties and things in the shared areas in those accommodations. There's so many societies that you can join within SOAS and wider in the University of London. You can join any from any of the universities of London that are all in this kind of surrounding area of SOAS. And basically, if you can think of something there might be a society for, the chances are very high that there will be a society for it. And my favourite part of SOAS is definitely the JCR. I think I've spent how many hundreds of hours in the JCR. That it was kind of like a default after class that you just walk straight there, get a bite to eat, and just hang out with people, get to know different people from all over the globe on different courses.
Yeah, and the
It's all-
location of SOAS, I mean, we could not have landed in a more desirable part of London, in a sense that we are near to a lot of green space, but we are minutes walk from museums, from Covent Garden, from the hubbub of, you know, clubbing world and restaurant world in Soho. So it's an absolute amazing location. So there's so much music at SOAS, there are film clubs, but you step out and you just are spoiled for choice of what the city of London can offer you in a very nice area of Bloomsbury. You cosseted in this sedate, calm surrounding, but out, you step a kilometer out of it, and the heart of the city, as Ben said, I think he needs to add London to his city coverage, pulsates with energy, and we can't wait to get back to it.
Yeah, there isn't any real replacement for really being there and having the kind of strange experiences of being in class one minute and then having a class outing to the British Museum to talk about the different artifacts that are there, and then wandering off into Tottenham Court Road and central London for a bite to eat, going via Chinatown for some bubble tea and picking up some textbooks, and then swinging back round again to get ready to go out in the evening and walk to Soho. That it's kind of, you're always walking everywhere, just because everything's right there at your fingertips. That it's such a unique location. I haven't been anywhere like it, really.
No. And that's only if we can get away from the cupcakes in the JCR, as you said, or what the student stalls have created, and the lovely food that they bring, or the nuts and seeds that they are selling. So we could live there 24/7, really.
Oh, you could. The amount of different charities that people raise money for as well by bringing in like bake sales, but also homemade food from their cultures that, again, all across the globe. There's, if you can think of a country, there's probably a student at SOAS from there that's, wants to contribute and share their culture through food in order to raise money for a different event. That a lot of times we'd go straight there to to try out their foods before we went into any like commercial stuff. And oh, I didn't even mention Hare Krishna. That's the Hare Krishna religious. It's a Hare Krishna is all you need to say at SOAS. It's definitely like the standard for lunch. That it's to do with the religion, and they bring a free, but it's you give a donation selection of food that you'll always see a probably hour queue for. Most of SOAS, a lot of friends that I've made that are lifelong friends, I met in the Hare Krishna queue.
So the YouTube, I think on the SOAS YouTube channel, I think there's, because one of our alumni students, they've made a film. I think he was in New York. There is a clip. So search for SOAS Hare Krishna food queue, and you have some lovely short, documentaries almost about it.
Amazing. anyways, so I don't think there's any more questions, but I want to thank everyone for coming, all of our academics, our student ambassadors, and everyone that's joined our session today. Like I said, this session is recorded and it will be circulated after the taster day, so don't worry if you've missed the beginning or the end of it. That's not a problem. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming.
And thank you to you, Amani John. Thank you. For
No worries.
us.
Thank you. Thank you. See you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. See you
Bye,
soon.
everyone.